Hello, everybody. Welcome to CricTracker's special show in the air. India has managed to win the second test against New Zealand. Our, cricket guest Pratik Tiwari a little, while ago had predicted that this was going to happen. Lekin itna jaldi aa jayega. We didn't know that. Let's quickly bring on Pratik Tiwari back in the studios, joining us. Unke hisab se, he made this prediction. But overall, taking a look at the second test, what he thought of the performance. Let's find out. Welcome back, Pratay. How are you doing? And of course, you made this prediction. Lekin, just to overall probably look at how the second test panned out in the series, what is your quick take?
See, as I said, I actually gave a couple of sessions to New Zealand because I expected them to fight a little bit more, but that did not happen. And it happened very quickly. I mean, 5 wickets they needed, but happening in a very quick span of time, not even probably just an hour, and they did it. So I think that, yes, a clinical performance, absolutely, because if you go back to the Kanpur test, there New Zealand actually managed to eke out a draw against the odds, and that was a very fighting show. But coming to Mumbai, I mean, getting tumbled out for 62, and then here for 165 odd, 167. It was definitely a slightly bit of disappointing performance. After the fight, they kind of showed in Kanpur, and even in this game, there was at one stage India did look like getting a big first inning scores, but they were still restricted to 320 odd, 330 odd because of the kind of bowling performance they had. And you have to feel sad a little bit for Ajaz Patel. I mean, that kind of performance, and I mean, that historic performance coming in a losing cause. So you have to feel sad for him, of course. But New Zealand would be very disappointed after the kind of fight they showed. They had actually given up a few hopes that they would be able to fight, but Mumbai does not turning out to be their way at all.
That's right. It's quite interesting that Pratay just spoke about the losing cause, because even I was trying to look at that. What really happens when you have that kind of a performance at that level, like how Pratay pointed out about Ajaz Patel? All of you tell me, apart from Ajaz, who else were you most impressed with? If you could tell me that in the comment section, and then maybe we'll get in, also a little bit of other interesting stats coming our way. On the other hand, most wins as captains and tests. Virat Kohli stands at 39 currently. He's fourth on that particular list. How do you look at this particular stat, Pratya? I mean, there's no surprises for guessing that Virat is a very good captain in the test format. But now, talking about Virat, talking about this win, and adding that to the World Test Championship final cycle, how do you look at that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Virat Kohli, the batsman, has not been able to perform up to the mark. But there's no doubt about his captaincy. The way India wins these games, be it at home or even the last couple of years, the way they have won while traveling abroad. I think there's this kind of a ruthlessness that probably we have not seen as much in the previous generations. Of course, we have been led by one of the greatest captains. All of them have brought a lot of laurels. But one thing that we have seen that has not been probably in those generations was this kind of attitude, was this kind of fearlessness, because this is what Virat Kohli always brings onto the table, that he always endorses a brand of cricket which is entirely fearless, and he's always in your face. So he's not going
Yeah.
to go back onto the defensive. And even in this game, when there were questions raised about India not enforcing a follow on, it was, of course, a tactical move that they had. Otherwise, we have seen India being in a position and when they have actually opted to do that. So I think 39 victories, and on that list, Graham Smith at the top with 53, if I recall it correctly. I mean, I think that he is someone who has got a lot of cricket in him, and even if he does not continue to lead India in the shorter formats, even if he gives up the ODI captaincy, I do not see Virat Kohli giving up the Test captaincy anytime soon. And I clearly think that 13, 14 odd Test matches that he needs to win, we might as well see him ending up as the most successful captain ever in the Test history. He's definitely a front runner now, as of now, with the kind of performances he has given as a captain for India.
ओके सारे कोहली के फैंस, अगर आप देख रहे हो ये शो, मुझे बताइए कमेंट सेक्शन में प्रत्येक तिवारी का जो व्यू पॉइंट है उसके हिसाब से आपको क्या लगता है. ऑल्सो लुकिंग एट द पास्ट रिकॉर्ड्स, लेट्स टेक अ लुक एट द समरी ऑफ द सेकंड टेस्ट एंड फाइंड आउट कि वेयर थिंग्स रियली पैन आउट फॉर बोथ दीस टीम्स. यहाँ पे अगर देखा जाए 325 and then 276, and then of course they, New Zealand was bundled out for 62 in the first innings, and in the second one 167. We've spoken so much about Mayank Agarwal, Ajaz Patel, Ravichandran Ashwin, but one person who has managed to also do really well in the second innings as well is Jayant Yadav. Now, when that entire squad was announced, people were kind of wondering about that decision. But Fateh, how do you look at his performance, him being added to the squad? आपका क्या कहना है?
See, definitely, because definitely impressive. 4 wickets for him in this innings, and he really bowled well. I mean, this morning he was absolutely spot on. A couple of deliveries, maybe where he lost his line or lost his control a little bit, but he was definitely more impressive than he was yesterday. And the thing is that, see, of course, you will talk about Ashwin. He's a legend of the game, a veteran of over 420 wickets. Of course, he's going to be discussed, but not to forget that Jayant Yadav is not always a first choice player. He's not someone who is regularly given chances in the test setup for India. So I think for him to turn up this way, because even in the last game, I mean, had it not been an injury for Ravindra Jadeja, we would not have been seeing him play this game. So he came in for him, but to fill in those big boots of Jadeja, it's not easy. So I think that he has done very well, and 4 wickets for him, absolutely impressive performance. And again, it just goes on to tell you how deep this Indian lineup is. I mean, you have so many people rested, so many players not a part of this series. There's no Shami, there's no Bumrah, there's no Pant, there's no KL Rahul. He's out his injury, and in this game there's no Rahane, there's no Ishant Sharma, and still India manages to do what they did, 372, the biggest ever victory in terms of runs. So it just goes on to tell you that how dominant, how ruthless this team is when it comes to winning games, at least specifically back at home.
It's interesting you took so many names because out of that, it's Jasprit Bumrah's birthday today, Ravindra Jadeja's birthday today, Shreyas Iyer's birthday
Yes,
today, Karun Nayer's birthday today, RP Singh's birthday today, and Andrew Flintoff. So it's quite interesting that aaj ka din is special in many ways. On the other hand, if you were to talk about the World Test Championship final, final in the sense the cycle which will lead to the final. India is currently sitting with a percentage of 58.33 after this particular win in Mumbai. The third on the table, followed by Pakistan. Sri Lanka is currently sitting there with 100%. But if you were to talk about, they've won three and they have drawn two and lost one. This is, of course, the current cycle. So this is where things stand at the moment. But on the other hand, when we spoke about Jayant Yadav, we also have to speak about one person who is again, magnificent with the ball. No surprises for guessing. We're talking about Ravichandran Ashwin. If you could quickly take a look at his stats, all of you tell me in the comment section, aapko kya laga? Who was the most impressive? From either of the teams, irrespective of who you were supporting, tell me that in the comment section. If you could take a look at how Ashwin, did, and then we'll get all of you to also tell us what you thought about it. यहाँ पे 22.3 overs, 4 wickets, 34 runs, and his economy being fabulous 1.50. Of course, Pate has spoken about this earlier as well. But there's a comment coming in. I'll quickly take this. Resounding win for India in their own backyard, comprehensively outclassed New Zealand on a track with turn and bounce. Complete all-round effort with Mayank and Ashwin leading the way. One does feel for history maker Ajaz. I mean, rightly said, rightly put it. I'm sorry, your name is in another language that I cannot really read, but do let me know, what your name is. But I'll come to Pratay on this particular comment coming in. Ravichandran Ashwin we have spoken about, but these are the stats for people who wanted to, find out how he did in this innings. Pratay, coming back to you, the viewer that has commented, brilliantly, 2 points, the fact that, India has won comprehensively in their backyard, and two, Agarwal and Ashwin leading the way for India. And then, of course,
Yeah,
you feel bad for someone like Ajaz Patel.
of course you do. Of course you do. I mean, 17 out of the 17 wickets, he managed to bag 14, and
Yeah.
still not being able to end up on the winning side. Of course, he would feel a little bad because it's a historic feat. But no matter how good or how bad kind of performance you give on the field, you always want to end up on the winning side. You always want your team to win. So yes, personal milestone for him. It's a very big one. It's a very historic one. As I said, that only thrice in the history or in the 144-year history of the game, if something has happened only 3 times, you can just make out how rare and how unique that feat is. So I think that he would be very happy, of course, but still, as I said, that they have lost the series, they have lost the game, and that too by a massive margin. I mean, 372. It's a mind-boggling margin. It's a very, very big margin that they have lost the game by. Speaking of Ashwin, I think he is someone who has continue to perform all the time. I mean, there's never that you would see him going out of form, at least as far as the longer format of the game is concerned. And he is such an intelligent, such a thinking cricketer. There's no point of time when you would find him short of ideas. If things would not go his way, he would come up with something else. He keeps on doing, he keeps on trying, and he keeps on thriving. So I'm not at all surprised. I mean, the way he has performed in this year. I mean, 50 wickets. That is no mean feat. I mean, that's a whopping tally. I mean, 50 wickets in a single year in Test matches. It's massive, and not to forget that he was not a part of the England series. He was, but he did not get to play even a single test. Four Test matches. You're talking at least about by Ashwin standards, at least 12 to 14 wickets in those four games. So that much he has missed out on and still managed to take 50. I mean, kudos to him and Agrawal as well. We have already talked about him a lot. He has done everything that he had in his own hands. A century, a big one, 150. It's a big century, not a small one. It's a big ton, and followed that up by another half century. But of course, we understand that he would not be the first choice when India goes to South Africa. But this is what the depth of Indian cricket right now looks like. You can do anything, but there's so much. I mean, there's a plethora of talent and so many options that you have that you still cannot probably secure your place in the side.
That's right. And I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to performances. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of a call the management will take for the next series. काफी interesting है. एक series खत्म होते ही सांस लेने का वक्त नहीं है. We're on to the next series to find out what's going to be happening. So उसमें it'll be interesting. But talking about Ajaz Patel and talking about best test bowling figures in a losing cause, Ajaz Patel is not the only one who has felt this pain. 9 for 83 Kapil Dev versus West Indies in 1983. 9 for 95 Jack Nurgaya versus India in 1971. 9 for 102 Subhash Gupte versus West Indies in 1958. And Keshav Maharaj versus Sri Lanka in 2018. 9 for 129. So obviously, when you look at the fact that there's such exceptional performances, but it goes in a losing cause, and the way Pratay put it together, because for Ajaz Patel as well, I think initially in the first test, people were hoping that he would pick up a few wickets, but that did not really pan out the way it did. Then the attention in the second test, they thought that of course the Pacers would actually have a better chance. But ये तो कहानी में twist होता रहता है. But what did you all think? I definitely want to know, if we were to make a report card, apart from of course keeping Ajaz Patel's performance aside, who do you think deserves full credit, to whether it's, do you think in the entire series, let's combine the first and second series, साथ में आप सबको क्या लगता है? Tell me that in the comment section. We'll also ask Professor Pratay before we wrap. But before that, let's take a look at social tracker पे क्या conversation चल रहा है. I'm pretty sure a lot is happening with the win that India has. RP Singh, the birthday boy, having tweeted, beating number one test side in almost 3 days by the biggest margin in home conditions is great. Congratulations, Team India, for beating the world test champion in the Indian versus New Zealand test series. Okay. This is of course interesting because now it also, kind of at the end of the day, it's about the World Test Championship cycle, like we spoke earlier. But now, before we wrap up, let's find out from Pratay. उनके report card के हिसाब से top 5 students कौन थे, combining both the first and second test. Pretty sure Shreyas Iyer is making his name to that report card. So give me 4 other names before we wrap up.
See, definitely, yes, because I mean, the kind of performance he gave and in the first Test match, getting a debut century is, of course, very special. In this game, if you talk about, there was Mayank Agrawal, as we have already discussed. I mean, 150, that was a knock under pressure because he was a comeback man and he had to perform. I mean, he could not have done any better than that, what he did. Ashwin, of course, you will have to talk about him because I mean, if India is playing back home, and you are not talking about Ashwin, it's nearly impossible that you would not be discussing about him. And specifically, I think that in the previous game, the contribution might not look big, but I think that if you're talking about the result, because how game panned out, you have to give a lot of credit to Rachin Ravindra because and even Ajaz Patel, of course, he has done what he has done in this game. But in the previous game, you cannot forget that had it not been for them, India would have won this series 2-0 instead of
Yeah.
1-0. They could have won 2-0 because that last wicket alliance of theirs, they're blocking out 50, 52 odd balls amongst them. It was definitely not easy in the fading light against the Indian spinners on a track with inconsistent bounce and with that kind of quality of the Indian spinners, Jadeja, Akshar Patel, and of course Ravichandran Ashwin. We have to give
Yeah.
a lot of credit to them as well. And I think that it was more or less, I mean, in Mumbai, of course, they would be disappointed, but still to come to India and to give the kind of fight New Zealand did in Kanpur, that sort of tells you that why they are the World Test Championship final winners, why they are defending this time their title. They have won the inaugural edition of it. So that just goes on to tell you that how what kind of depth they have. Of course, you will look more at the performances of the Indians because they have ended up on the winning side, but taking no credit away absolutely from New Zealand as far as the first game is concerned. This game did not turn out their way, but even in the first innings, as I said, India was looking well set for probably a 400, 450 kind of a score. They managed to restrict them. But I think when they got out for 62, from there on, they had left too much to catch up on. And from there on, they could not. But I
Yeah.
think that still, you talked about the WTC, they are playing Bangladesh at home next. And Bangladesh has never won, not even a single time in any format. They have never won in New Zealand. So I think that it's going to be a simple series for New Zealand that they will look forward to. India, on the other hand, will have a lot of challenge because they are going to South Africa. So I think that yes, interesting, but still now the WTC the points table has started to take shape. So let's see
Right.
how this goes.
ओके उसी के साथ बिफोर वी रैप लेट्स टेक अ क्विक लुक कि सोशल ट्रैकर पे क्या हो रहा है व्हाट आर द ट्वीट्स लाइक आई मीन आई एम प्रीटी श्योर द कन्वर्सेशन इज स्टिल हैपनिंग विल हैपन द एंटायर डे टुडे सो इफ यू कुड टेक अ लुक एट द ट्वीट्स and see what is really happening there. Venkatesh Prasad has said fantastic win for India. New Zealand played fabulously to save the first test, but India were just too good in Mumbai. Feel happy for Jayant Yadav, who was waiting for a long for a comeback, and Mayank Agarwal showed his class when most other batsmen struggled. So I think he's talking about the second test match, if I'm not mistaken. Congratulations to the Indian team. The test will be remembered for Ajaz Patel's 10 wicket haul. Last time Anil Kumble achieved this feat in 99, is what Mohammad Azruddin has tweeted, which is kind of true. If you happen to look at it, some great performances by the Indians, but of course, for history being actually happening, you have to give Ajaz Patel that particular credit for having done so. Anyway, on that particular note, we want to thank everybody for joining us in the studios. A very good win for India. Looks like Pratyay Tiwari is also a very happy Indian cricket fan at the end of the day, because we always talk about how Phil Williamson manages to smile after a particular loss, after a particular win against India. But this time around, it's Kohli and the boys who are smiling. But lots more cricket will be happening. We'll be back very soon, not only on In the Air, but all our other social media channels as well. So don't forget to follow us everywhere. Until we see you next time, take care and stay safe. Bye bye.